One thing I'll tell you right here, Minnesota Wild fans. Finally, we are seeing Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy get recalled to the team at the same time. Take a look at the news that was published by the Minnesota Wild on Twitter earlier today. They have indeed called forwards Matt Boldy and Marco Rossi from the Iowa Wild to the taxi squad. It only took so long. The team's been losing games. They need a spark. This is a spark. This is the move, and this is something that a lot of people have gone out there and said their prayers about. They've been wanting this. They've been waiting for this for so long because Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy have been two of the best Iowa Wild players this season. And it hasn't even really been all too close. I mean, you take a look at where exactly the team is right now. Yes, they do need the bodies. They do need the players that come out there and get the job done. They haven't really been doing that all too much. Just like a few days ago, we had ourselves a few Wild fans that I saw making a big deal about how these players were not on the team for the Winter Classic. That's just kind of the weird state that the Wild are in right now. Yeah, they have a winning record on the season, but 5 in a row, it's been pretty bad as of late for the Wild. But now, Boldy and Rossi are having their share. The thing is, if you're going to go out there and say, okay, these guys are going to make the Minnesota Wild, they're on the taxi squad, they will likely make their debuts against the Boston Bruins on Thursday. If you're going to go out there and say that these guys are going to pretty much be mainstays on the Wild from now on, that's kind of where I'll disagree with you right there. You see, the Minnesota Wild are in a pretty weird spot with their cap. They have themselves about $2.7 million in cap space right now, and next season that number goes up to just a little bit over 16. But there are indeed a lot of things that the Wild are going to have to do with that $16 million that they do have. Fiala, Rask, Greenway, Pitlick, Bjugstad, Nico Sturm, Goligoski, Jordy Ben, John Merrill, Capo Kakinen, and then a few guys in the taxi squad as well. They're all going to need new contracts. And so for the Minnesota Wild, what they really need into this season and next season, because they do have some more guys that are expiring in next season's worth of play too. Matt Dumba is the big one that comes to mind, not to mention Cam Talbot. They're really going to need the most out of the contracts that they have that are entry-level contracts. When it comes to Marco Rossi, he's got himself a contract that expires in 2024. And what the common census is amongst media and Minnesota Wild fans alike is that the Wild would really prefer not to slide that Marco Rossi contract 1 year earlier. How would they do that? By playing him 9 games. This is the entire NHL entry-level contract sliding thing that has been a rule for a very long time, and Marco Rossi is a guy that kind of has that same fate in this situation. Now, does that mean if he absolutely demolishes Worlds, they're going to send him down? I don't know. Maybe if he's good enough, they say, okay, screw it, Victor Rask, you're done. You're not going to be in that spot anymore. We'll give Marco Rossi that spot with Kevin Fiala because, yeah, he's just better. If he is that much better, like a step completely above and beyond what Victor Rask is, then I could totally see a world where the Wild are just like, okay, screw it. He's good enough, we'll keep him around. And when it comes to Marco Rossi, I mean, there's no reason to believe that him being good enough is not a possibility. He's got 23 points in 21 games played this season for the Iowa Wild, 16 assists, 7 goals, and you take a look at a lot of the tape of what Marco Rossi has been doing this past season, it's almost kind of wild because he took the entire 2020-2021 campaign off due to very complicated issues with the virus. We all know that he almost died because he got himself a positive case in, I believe it was a year ago. Yeah, it was after the World Juniors and a little stint with ZSC and the Swiss League. It was a year ago that Marco Rossi pretty much almost experienced death, and it was very scary for him to proceed the way that he did. But now, hey, guess what? It's almost a full calendar year later. He is over a point per game as a 20-year-old in the AHL. You go over to the AHL historical record books and you see that Marco Rossi's production is right on par with some other top prospects that have had success at the NHL level. Alex Newhook, Jack Roslovic, Josh Norris are over here. You go down the list and you see who else he has beaten out as a 20-year-old in the AHL. Claude Giroux comes to mind, JT Miller comes to mind, Bobby Ryan comes to mind. These guys at their best are all top-of-the-line players, and you have yourselves Marco Rossi, who is in that conversation with his small stature, only 5'9", 183, but his ability to just deflect pressure away, make some really good plays, and just be so aware of what is going on. There's a reason why this guy was the top CHL point producer in his draft year, and he made it look really easy while doing so. I'm just so excited to see at least 1 or 2 games from Marco Rossi, even if he doesn't stick around for the full 9-game sample, because at the end of the day, this is what you get your fans excited for. These are the guys that the people want to see. And when it comes to Matt Boldy, hey, he's gone out there and proved himself super useful as well. He's only played 10 games this season, and the reason for that is because he's actually coming off of, I believe it's a knee injury, and that was super recent too. I believe he's only played 2 or 3 games since coming back from that injury, so it makes sense to me why the Minnesota Wild did not want to give Boldy any extended time with the main team, because they want to make sure that he's actually okay. They don't want to rush this guy into an NHL role right away. But in the limited sample size that we have had, he has indeed been one of the best players out there on the ice, just showing off the two-way responsibility, the Swiss Army knife nature to his game where he can make plays, he can battle on the boards, he can play responsibly in his own zone. He can do a lot of things, and Matt Boldy was always seen as this kind of player ever since his days with the NTDP, where Jack Hughes was the... I don't want to say this, but I'll say it anyway, just for the sake of comparison. Where Jack Hughes was the Connor McDavid of the team, dictating the game with his speed. Where Cole Caulfield was the sniper on the team, potting in goals left, right, and center. Where Trevor Zegras was the dazzling playmaker that would make some crazy plays. Where Alex Turcotte was the two-way workhorse, you had yourselves Matt Boldy, who had a skill profile that was just a melting pot of all these individual traits. He was pretty fast, but not the fastest guy on the team. He was pretty good at scoring, but not as good as Cole Caulfield. He was creative with his playmaking, but he wasn't as good as Jack Hughes or Trevor Zegras. He was just a two-way responsible guy who just knew how to play the game right, and his development with Boston College and eventually in Iowa has served him very well because of that. And so now, Matt Boldy suiting up for the Minnesota Wild is going to be very, very good to see against the Boston Bruins. And everybody's kind of talking about the same thing. Dude, if you want to go out there and play these guys with Kevin Fiala, finally give the guy line mates, then... Firstly, you have to make sure that your defense is going to be great, because who knows how good that line is going to be defensively, but offensively, finally give Kevin Fiala some line mates for once. I honestly am pretty intrigued for this because, you know, as a guy who has been watching the Minnesota Wild for quite a while now, not to say that I'm the biggest fan in the world, but like, just knowing what this team goes through. Knowing that Victor Rask is the main guy for Kevin Fiala sometimes, and that Frederick Gaudreau is suiting up over here as an important piece as well. Fiala is a very good talent, and we all know that he has himself an ability to create offense that not a lot of other players on the Wild have. It's just, when you take a look at the way these lines are distributed, it does kind of irk itself out when you think about, okay, just how good is Kevin Fiala being utilized? Because he is in a contract year. We don't really know if he's going to come back. That's the entire problem that the Minnesota Wild are facing when it comes to their cap crunch. It's one of them, at least. And for Kevin Fiala, I mean, he has himself a really good scoring ability, although he only has 7 goals in 31 games played this season. One of the top guys on the team when it comes to points, behind Zuccarello, Hartman, and Kaprizov, who are all just the first line. But just adding 2 guys with the offensive potential of a Boldy and a Rossi. I almost said Kaprizov there. Had to catch myself a little bit. It makes me super intrigued as to how this team is going to be able to perform against a Boston Bruins squad that hasn't really been doing all too great in this season either. Now, I say that holistically on the year because the Bruins are still kind of fighting for that final wildcard spot. They have won 2 in a row. Don't get me wrong. But it's going to be pretty great seeing the Minnesota Wild and these two guys go out there and play Boston. So talk to me in the comments. What do you think about Boldy and Rossi finally being recalled to the Minnesota Wild? I felt like I had to make a video about this. This is such a crazy, great piece of news over here. Again, I'm not really too sure if we're going to have ourselves a full-time stint for the remaining however many games that the Wild are going to play with these two guys. The contracts and everything sliding forward is something that I think the Minnesota Wild do have to think about, especially considering the other cap problems they're going to have. But let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on that front. Is it worth it to just say, screw it, we'll play Rossi the rest of the year. If he's good enough, he gets 3 points in this game, and then 3 points the next game, and then 3 points the game after that. We play this guy till the end of the season. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on that front, if that is what you think should be the decision over here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.